Welcome back to Let's Analyze Elsword Revamped. Like each of these videos, there's a link in the description if you'd like to read my fanfiction of Elsword before watching further. If you finish chapter 3, you're probably thinking something along the lines of, WTF bruh, do you see what you've done? I understand this chapter is very controversial, but I can explain. Feel free to lower your pitchforks and torches at any time. The first half of this chapter goes into detail on Aisha's side story where she and Hugh and Barn searched for the Ring of Mimir, but I changed a lot. Instead of a magical gate that Aisha opens, there's a cave entrance. I know the developers intended to make her look smart by learning an ancient language so soon, but it's a huge info dump they could have shown like I did. I explained why the Landar family wanted the ring because nothing does that. You'd think one of the ancestors would tell the next generation why they want a ring of infinite magical energy, right? I get some mixed messages from reading her side story because some ancestors say it might not exist. Others say that if it does, the artifact shouldn't be used carelessly. If you're advising others to be cautious about something, that something must exist. I kept the warning as foreshadowing for what happens later. The cave interior resembles a tomb to show how different yet familiar it could be. It's different because there are cups of stone holding torches, which isn't natural. It's familiar because they might expect other adventurers to leave torches there to light the way, and buried ruins in Elrios isn't strange. When Aisha notices that torches have magical flames instead of natural ones, this is not to tell how smart she is. If so, I would be repeating what the game developers did with her side story. Aisha notices them to give the impression that other adventurers might have thought those torches were normal. The side story mentioned how Aisha and Kyun Barn had to deal with 11 dead ends and 3 traps, never going into detail. I took out the dead ends because they're useless to the narrative, especially with that many. The traps are there to show how smart Aisha is compared to her grandfather, and it shows how much of a red herring the torches were. When Aisha is meditating, she's actually using the skill Meditate to restore her MP. Even with her best max MP increasing passives, Aisha wouldn't have enough MP to finish the third puzzle without Meditate. You could say Aisha's grandfather has a bad back, and him using magic too often is not related. You could also say magic sucking up mana tires out the muscles in your body, which is hinted from Aisha feeling drained after losing her powers in the side story. Her monologuing how she's the genius mage is part of her character. Aisha will often boast her genius magician title in story dialogue and dungeon victory quotes. I chose mage instead of magician to make it sound not as lengthy. After the last puzzle being another spike trap, you might be wondering why they're all spike traps to begin with. Personally, I like traps where the threat is obvious, but the method of getting past it is not. When you know the danger, it's a matter of critical thinking to get around or eliminate it. Blizzard Shower's projectiles are positioned in front of Aisha instead of around her, like they are in the game. When she still has her powers before the ring stole them, Aisha should be strong enough to change their positions. The dumbest part of her side story would be how the ring didn't give her unlimited power immediately. To make someone carelessly use power, you make them tempted first with a lot of power. In the side story, Aisha is forced to tap into the ring's power because she's losing to Hanon. The second dumbest part is how she's losing to Hanon. If Aisha is supposed to have been a really powerful mage before the ring stole her powers, why is she only throwing fireballs? I get that Hanon is tough by the time you fight him in Elrianode, but remember that time is far into the future when he's probably gotten tougher from Henir. The number 48 for Aisha's meteor shower means that she fully extended it. Since the fire orb from Aisha's infernal wave skill engulfed Hanon's body, that means it's bigger than how it normally is, so Aisha was in awakening mode. When she mentions how thrilling the ring's power is, that shows how close she's getting tempted to overuse it. And not too long after that is when she really wants to overuse the ring. It's true that Hanon wasn't close to dying as Aisha could sense, but he sounded like he couldn't fight back. The Hellstone skill is from the Dark Magician job, and it's not until Void Princess that Aisha makes a contract with Ankor, so that has not happened. Some Aisha players might be really ticked off to see Aisha act so horrific with how she'll kill Hanon. Did she really have to torture him? To answer that, do know that the temptation of power can change people in twisted ways, and that's exactly what happened here. The Aether Sage players might be ticked off with how she's able to use Aether Immersion, but the basis for this skill and this job has a contradiction. Aether Sage discovers how to use multiple elements simultaneously and names it Aether, but a Transcendent Elemental Master has the skill Circle of Elements. This has Aisha simultaneously use fire and ice, so she already has access to Aether. You might also argue how Aisha says, "I'll show you the epitome of magic," when casting Aether Immersion, but that doesn't mean the skill wasn't at its strongest before she lost her powers. Here's a picture that details what skills she used in the cave and the MP she needed. Regarding MP usage in this fanfiction, I'd like it to be reasonable if the characters have their best max MP increasing passes from their job paths, but not have access to MP restoring items. The insane amount of MP Aisha used during the Henan fight is from the ring, which is why it backfired. Henon's note is there to show how different he is compared to Banthus. He could have killed Aisha after taking the ring, but he did give her the chance to live. Even in the side story, Henon left her alive. After reading the chapter, you might be wondering how Henon got Hyun Barnes' map to write his note without killing him. Remember that he must have reunited with Aisha to bring her to Ruben, so that wall separating him was gone. How he got reunited doesn't matter. By the time he did, Henon already stole the ring and was able to make Hyun Barnes give the map. Now you might be wondering why. He could have told Hyun Barnes what to tell Aisha when she wakes up. By writing a note, it's more personal and permanent. Henon used someone else's belongings to laugh at Aisha's failure. If he told Hyun Barnes what to say, his message could be altered to sound less condescending. This really gives him the egotistical charm that Banthus doesn't have. Now let's talk about Hyun Barnes bringing Aisha to Ruben instead of her traveling to Ruben. It's dumb of the side story to delay her traveling. I don't see any reason she has to take X amount of days to research methods of getting her powers back and go to Ruben. Hyun Barnes could have done that for her while she was asleep, which also shows how much he cares for her. I'm surprised he didn't do that in her side story. What in the world did he do in that 1 week time span while she was asleep? To clarify when Aisha saves Ruben compared to Elsword's activity, the attack on the village is altered in how it's described. In the first chapter, the defenseless were hiding behind Lo's cadets, who were equally matched with the bandits. Here, the defenseless are running away, and the cadets are no longer at a stalemate since the bandits are killing people. Remember how Lo mentioned Elsword had a confidence-boosting presence in the first chapter? Imagine how they must have felt when they saw Elsword, the one person that could have saved Ruben from the stalemate, leave without a second glance. Their morale hit rock bottom, so it's no wonder the bandits overwhelmed them. Without Lo and Elsword to back them up, how else are they going to win? Who's this big Foru talking about William Slash? It's William Foru. My only defense for this massive info dump that Hyun Barnes tells Aisha is that I have no other way to do it. Obviously, Aisha wants to know right away, but since he has to go rest soon, they can't speak, and she gets roped into talking with Haggis later on. As frowned upon as info dumps are, they can never be ruled out as a narrative tool. Sometimes you can't do anything better than an info dump. Here's another massive controversy to some people. Ciel is here without his contract with Lu because that hasn't happened yet, and he's hired by Hoffman to kill Wally. I thought it was a shame that we never got much of a background for his past as a hitman. This is a big controversy because people probably don't care about Ciel without Lu. Readers are worried that the spotlight will be fought over since there are too many characters introduced near the beginning, and the only skills he will have access to can't be demonic, which limit him to flick shot and hunting prey. Personally, I think his interactions with people outside of Lu's contract will show how he's really like instead of acting as her butler. Since there are two teams progressing the story, the spotlight will not be fought over since one team will be absent from the other per chapter, so half or more of the cast will not be present. When the chapter that makes the other team or characters relevant, the spotlight will shine on only them. This balances how much attention from readers is divided between characters. Between Chapter 2's ending and Chapter 3, Ciel met up and decided to work with Rose's group. It makes sense for a hitman to want to stick to the shadows before getting his target, and since he's a normal person, he can be her mediator to Elsword's group. The devices might sound like horribly designed cell phones, but this allows Rose and Ayn to eavesdrop on what Elsword's group is saying. It's a sneaky way of keeping track on them. The team name Secret Service is not a purposeful reference to the White House's Secret Service group. It's very literal. Rose and Ayn are giving a service that's supposed to be a secret, which is keeping tabs on the Elstone. These two words also make the acronym SS, and that's the highest rank a player can get for the overall dungeon result score. Yes, I did that part on purpose. Now for the most controversial thing in this chapter. the effect of Elsword's decision to abandon Ruben to help Lo. The game portrays Elsword as a reckless hero, but nothing bad happens from his recklessness. Ruben's devastation is a good example of how dangerous his recklessness can be. It's a stereotype for reckless heroes to make problems because they're not cautious enough, and they usually learn from their mistakes. Elsword does not. Anyway, if he stayed, Ruben wouldn't have as many people die. Lo would die instead, and Banthus would have gotten farther in his escape. Reyna might not have been able to see Wally take him away too. You could say it's Lo's fault that Elsword didn't do so well because when he got Lo's weapon, he forgot to get the sheath. Don't you think that's odd? Most swords are in a sheath or near it. I know Elsword is not the smartest, but even he wouldn't unsheath a sword or grab it next to a sheath and not take the sheath. Elsword didn't say he couldn't find it though, which implies that it's in a hidden location in Lo's room, and that's normal. I'll go into more detail on this sheath in a future chapter. Now if he did get it, he would have climbed the wall at Spirit Falls faster, taken down Banthus before his backup arrived, and Reyna would have kept the Elstone safe from bandits while Elsword and Lo resolved the village attack. That sounds good, right? Well, the problems for keeping the Elstone is that Raven would still be under King Nahazat's control, and the demon invasion would have happened with no warning. What do I think about Chapter 3 overall? It's a necessary evil. Elsword as a game tries to sweep these dark themes under the rug, and it's more harm than good. Ignoring them can make the story not taken seriously. If you like this video or the fanfiction, show your support in the comments or with a review on fanfiction.net.